I never saw it coming. Not in the way you'd expect, at least. There was no lipstick on the collar, no hushed phone calls in the middle of the night, no gradual pulling away, no lingering scent of someone else on her clothes. If anything, Lorraine acted more affectionate in the last few months of our marriage than she had in years. She kissed me longer before leaving for work, laughed at my bad jokes like she used to when we were young, and held my hand in the car again. It felt like we had found our way back to each other. I was wrong. The truth didn't come out in some dramatic revelation. There was no tearful confession, no angry confrontation. Instead, one evening, Lorraine simply sat me down at the dinner table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't place. Not guilt, not sadness, relief. "I need to tell you something," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand in hers. "I've been seeing someone else, and I don't want to lie to you anymore." That moment, was when my entire world split in half. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My body felt like it had turned to stone, like I was suddenly watching my own life from the outside. My hand went limp in hers. I heard the words, understood them, but my mind refused to accept them. What? It was the only thing I could say. She squeezed my hand gently, as if she were comforting me. "I met him 6 months ago. It just happened. It just happened. Like a car accident. Like spilling coffee on a white shirt. Like an unexpected thunderstorm ruining a sunny afternoon." I stared at her, searching for the woman I had married, the woman who had once promised me forever. She was still there, physically, but she might as well have been a stranger. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She wasn't apologizing. She was telling me she was leaving. And just like that, she did. No begging me to understand, no dramatic exit. She had a bag packed in the hallway. A suitcase I hadn't noticed until that very moment. I didn't ask where she was going, and she didn't offer to tell me. She stood, kissed me on the forehead, actually kissed me, and whispered, "You're a good man, Walter. You always have been." And then she was gone. I sat at that table for hours, staring at the untouched meal in front of me. The fork in my hand never made it to my mouth. The food grew cold, just like everything else in my life. For weeks, I functioned on autopilot. I went to work, came home, slept in an empty bed, and repeated the process. I told no one. I didn't want to explain, didn't want to hear the pity in people's voices. My marriage was over, and I didn't even get the dignity of fighting for it. She had made the decision for both of us. And so I let her go. Or at least, I tried. Because months later, when I had finally started to stitch my life back together, Lorraine came back. And she expected me to open the door. I remember the exact moment I saw her again. It was one of those quiet evenings when life finally starts feeling normal again, when the emptiness stops echoing quite so loudly. I had just gotten home from work, kicked off my shoes, and was about to sit down with a glass of whiskey when I heard the knock at the door. It wasn't frantic, just steady, a rhythm that felt too familiar. For a second, I froze. Nobody came to my house unannounced anymore. After Lorraine left, I had become the kind of man people tiptoed around, unsure of what to say. The invitations to drinks with friends had dwindled. The concerned check-ins had stopped. People move on. That's how it works. But this knock, it sent something sharp through my chest. When I opened the door, she was standing there. Lorraine. I almost didn't recognize her. Not because she looked different, she didn't. Same hazel eyes, same auburn hair that she used to complain about being too frizzy, same posture, always leaning just slightly to one side. It was the expression on her face that threw me. She looked lost. For months, I had imagined what I'd say if I ever saw her again. Would I be cold? Would I slam the door in her face? Would I demand answers? Ask her if he had left her the way she had left me? Instead, I just stared. "Walter." Her voice was soft, careful. "Hi." I almost laughed. "Hi." Like we were old friends running into each other at a grocery store. I didn't invite her in. Didn't move from the doorway. She hesitated, then exhaled. "Can we talk?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to turn around and go back to my whiskey and pretend this wasn't happening. But there was something in her voice, something that sounded almost like regret. Almost. I stepped aside. She walked in like she had never left. Like this house was still hers. She even glanced toward the kitchen, as if expecting to see the dinner table where she had once sat across from me, and told me she was leaving. I closed the door and folded my arms. "What do you want, Lorraine?" She swallowed hard, looking down at her hands. For the first time since I'd known her, she seemed unsure of herself. "I made a mistake," she said finally. I felt something inside me go ice cold. She must have seen it on my face because she rushed to explain. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was doing the right thing, that I needed something else, something more. She let out a shaky breath. But it wasn't real, Walter. None of it was. I didn't respond. I wasn't sure I could respond, because part of me had been waiting for this moment. And now that it was here, it didn't feel the way I thought it would. She kept talking. She stopped, closing her eyes briefly before starting again. He wasn't who I thought he was. I thought I was choosing happiness, but all I did was destroy the one thing that ever really mattered to me. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt like she was finally getting what she deserved. Instead, all I felt was exhausted. I rubbed a hand over my face. So what now? You show up here, months later, and expect me to do what? Forget it happened? She looked up at me then, and I could see it in her eyes. She had expected that. She thought I'd still be the man who would take her back, the man who loved her so much he'd do anything to fix what was broken. That man was gone. I shook my head. You left, Lorraine. You didn't just walk away. You burned everything down on your way out. And now you want to come back and pretend like it never happened. She blinked rapidly, and I realized she was trying not to cry. I don't know where else to go. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because, for so long, this was the place she could always come back to. This house, this life, me. And she had thrown it away. I took a step back and opened the door again. Then maybe you should figure that out. She stared at me, stunned. For a second, I thought she might argue. That she'd beg, plead, tell me she was wrong and that we could fix this. But she didn't. She just nodded slowly, stepping past me and out into the night. I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door. I didn't sleep that night. Even after I closed the door, after Lorraine walked away into the night, my mind kept replaying the scene over and over again. The way she had looked at me, like a woman who had finally understood the weight of her own choices. Like someone who had spent months convincing herself she was right, only to realize too late that she had been terribly, disastrously wrong. And now, after all that time, she had come back. For what? For me? The thought should have made me angry. Maybe a part of me was angry, but mostly I just felt hollow. Because when she left, it had gutted me. Every part of me had been wrapped up in her, and when she was gone, it felt like she had taken pieces of me with her. The nights had been the worst, staring at the empty side of the bed, wondering where she was, if she was happy, if she even thought about me at all. I had been through hell. I had crawled my way back from the pit she had thrown me into. And now she wanted to talk. I sat on the couch, staring at the half-empty glass of whiskey I had abandoned when I answered the door. The ice had melted, the drink now more water than liquor. But I didn't drink it. I just sat there, gripping the glass so tightly my fingers hurt. It wasn't just the past few hours that haunted me, it was everything that had led up to this moment. I had loved Lorraine with everything I had. I had given her every part of myself, trusted her without question. And for what? For her to decide, one night over dinner, that she wanted something different? That she needed something different? She had walked out of our life without hesitation, without a single tear. And yet, months later, she had been standing in my doorway, telling me she had made a mistake. I wanted to believe that was enough. That hearing those words, seeing the regret in her eyes, would bring me some kind of closure. But it didn't. Because no matter how much she regretted it, she had still left. And I wasn't sure I could ever forgive that. The next morning, I woke up groggy, my mind still heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I had barely slept, and when I finally dragged myself out of bed, I felt like I was moving in slow motion. I went through the motions, showered, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, debating whether I should call someone, tell them what had happened. But who would I even tell? The people who had watched me fall apart after Lorraine left? The ones who had told me I was better off, who had spent months trying to help me rebuild myself. What would they say if I told them she had come back? I already knew the answer. They'd tell me to forget about her, to move on, to close the door and never look back. And maybe they were right. But something about the way she had looked at me last night wouldn't leave my mind. That broken expression, that quiet desperation. She had looked lost. Not the woman who had walked out so confidently months ago. Not the woman who had told me, with absolute certainty, that she needed something more. So what had changed? I was still thinking about it when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer. A part of me already knew who it would be, and I wasn't sure I was ready to hear whatever she had to say. But my hand moved before my brain could catch up, and suddenly, I was pressing the phone to my ear. Walter. Just my name. Soft. Careful. Like she wasn't sure if I'd hang up the second I heard her voice. I didn't. I didn't say anything, either. She took a breath. I know I don't deserve anything from you. Not after what I did. But please, just meet me. One time. That's all I'm asking. I should have said no. I should have told her there was nothing left to talk about. But the problem with heartbreak is that it doesn't just disappear. You can patch up the wounds. You can learn to live without someone. But there will always be scars. And sometimes, when the past comes knocking, you find yourself opening the door before you can stop yourself. I'll think about it, I said finally. And that was how, against all logic, against everything I had told myself, I agreed to see the woman who had broken me. I don't know why I agreed to meet her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the need for answers I had never gotten. Or maybe, deep down, some part of me still wanted to see if any piece of the woman I had loved was still there. Whatever the reason, I found myself standing outside a small cafe 2 days later, my hands shoved deep into my jacket pockets as the wind bit at my skin. She had picked the place. Neutral ground. Somewhere public, as if that would somehow make this easier. But nothing could make this easy. I spotted her before she saw me. She was sitting at a table by the window, fidgeting with a napkin, her nails tapping anxiously against the surface. She looked nervous, almost hesitant, a stark contrast to the woman who had walked away from me without a second glance. For a moment, I just stood there, watching her, wondering if this was a mistake. Then, as if sensing me, she looked up. Our eyes met through the glass, and I saw it again. That same lost expression from the night she had shown up at my door. I exhaled sharply, then pushed the door open. She straightened as I approached, but she didn't smile. Neither did I. Walter, she said softly as I sat down across from her. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You wanted to talk. So talk. She swallowed, nodding. Right. She glanced at her hands, then back up at me. I don't even know where to start. Try the beginning. My voice was flat. I didn't care to make this easier for her. She was the one who had wanted this meeting, not me. She bit her lip, hesitating. Then, finally, she spoke. When I left, I thought I was doing the right thing. She let out a shaky breath. I convinced myself that what we had wasn't enough anymore, that I needed something different. And when I met him, I thought he was, I don't know, exciting, new. He made me feel. She stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter. What matters is that I was wrong. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, waiting. She took another breath, her hands tightening into fists. At first, everything seemed perfect. He made all these promises, made me feel like I had made the best decision of my life. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Her voice dropped lower. He wasn't who I thought he was. He was controlling, jealous. He wanted me to be someone I wasn't. And when I started realizing that, when I started pushing back, he just stopped trying. He lost interest, like I was a toy he had gotten bored of. She swallowed. And then he left. Something twisted inside me, but I kept my expression blank. 3 months after I left you, I found myself alone in a city I barely knew, with no friends, no job, nothing. And for the first time, I understood what I had done, what I had thrown away. She looked up at me, her eyes pleading. I messed up, Walter. I ruined everything. And I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I needed to tell you. I let her words hang between us for a long moment, weighing them. I waited for you. I said finally, my voice quiet but firm. For months, I woke up every day wondering if you would come back, if you'd change your mind. And when you didn't, I had to teach myself how to exist without you. I had to rebuild everything you tore apart. She flinched. I know. No, Lorraine. I don't think you do. I leaned forward slightly, my voice colder now. You made a choice. A conscious, deliberate choice to leave. You packed your bags, kissed me goodbye, and walked out. And now, after all this time, you show up and expect what? Forgiveness? A second chance. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. I don't expect anything. She hesitated. I miss you. I let out a bitter laugh. You miss me? Lorraine, you didn't just leave me. You destroyed me. You shattered my trust, my love, everything I thought I knew about you. And now you miss me. I shook my head. You don't miss me. You miss the comfort, the safety, the version of me who would have done anything to keep you. She blinked rapidly, a tear slipping down her cheek. I don't know how to fix this. You can't. My voice was firm, final. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The cafe buzzed around us, the clinking of cups, the hum of conversation, but in our little corner, it felt like the world had gone silent. Finally, she exhaled shakily and nodded. I understand. I pushed my chair back, standing up. Good. As I turned to leave, she spoke one last time. Walter. I stopped but didn't turn around. Did you ever hate me? Her voice was so quiet, so fragile, like she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. I hesitated, then said the truth. No. Then I walked away. And this time, I was the one leaving her. As I walked away from that cafe, I expected to feel something: closure, relief, maybe even satisfaction. But I felt nothing. Just an odd numbness, like my mind hadn't caught up with the weight of what had just happened. Lorraine was out of my life. Again. This time, it was on my terms. So why did it still feel like a loss? The city was alive around me, cars passing, people talking, a dog barking somewhere in the distance, but it all felt distant, like I was moving through a world I wasn't really part of. I found myself walking aimlessly, not toward my car, not toward home, just walking. And as I walked, my mind drifted back to the beginning, to the life I had built with Lorraine before she threw it all away. We had met in the most ordinary way, two people at a mutual friend's party, making small talk over cheap drinks. She had this laugh, this effortless confidence that made people want to be around her. She pulled me in so quickly, so completely, that I didn't even realize it was happening. And before I knew it, she was my entire world. Marriage had been easy, at first. We were happy. At least, I thought we were. We built a life together, inside jokes, late-night conversations, lazy Sunday mornings in bed. There was a time when I would have sworn on my life that she loved me, that she would never hurt me. But people change. Or maybe they just reveal who they really are. Because love doesn't just vanish. It doesn't just disappear overnight. She must have known, long before she ever said the words, that she was pulling away, that she wanted something else. And yet, she let me believe. She let me love her with everything I had, right up until the moment she decided she was done. That was what I couldn't forgive. Not the affair itself, not even the betrayal, but the lie. The fact that I had spent years loving someone who had already stopped loving me. I stopped walking, realizing I had wandered into a small park. There was a bench nearby, half hidden under the shade of a tree, and I sank down onto it, exhaling slowly. It should have been the end. I should have been done with her. But life doesn't work that way. Because just as I was finally starting to let go, the past came crashing back in. It started with a phone call. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and without thinking, I pulled it out, expecting some spam number or a coworker I had forgotten to email back. But when I saw the name on the screen, my stomach tightened. Lorraine's mother. I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to her since the divorce, and I wasn't sure I wanted to now. But something about the timing, about Lorraine suddenly appearing in my life again, about this call coming right now, made my fingers move before I could stop myself. I answered. Hello. There was silence on the other end. Then, a quiet breath. Walter. Her voice was soft, strained, like she had been crying. I frowned. Everything okay? She hesitated. Then, finally, she said, It's Lorraine. Something cold crawled up my spine. What about her? My voice was sharper than I intended. Another pause. Then, she's in the hospital. The words didn't make sense at first. I blinked, shaking my head slightly, as if that would clear the confusion. What? She collapsed. They think it was exhaustion, dehydration, stress. But a shaky breath. She's not in good shape, Walter. I ran a hand over my face, my pulse picking up. Why are you telling me this? Because, her mother whispered, you're the only person she's been asking for. Silence. I stared out at the park, at the trees swaying gently in the wind, at the people passing by, oblivious to the way my world had just tilted sideways. Lorraine. In the hospital. Asking for me. After everything she had done. After all the pain. All the betrayal. Why would she want me there? And more importantly, why was I actually considering going? I should have said no. I should have told Lorraine's mother that whatever was happening to her wasn't my problem anymore. That she had made her choices, and I wasn't about to swoop in and pretend to be the man she had abandoned. But I didn't say no. Instead, I sat there on that park bench, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, and I listened as her mother's voice cracked with barely contained emotion. She doesn't have anyone else, Walter, she said. I know that might not mean anything to you, but please, if you ever loved her, even a little, just come see her. If I ever loved her, Those words twisted inside me because, for so long, loving Lorraine had been the only thing I knew how to do. I had built my entire life around that love, and she had taken it, burned it, and left me standing in the ashes. But that love had existed once, and that's why, despite everything, I found myself standing outside the hospital an hour later, staring up at the fluorescent lights glowing against the darkening sky. I almost didn't go in. I had driven here on autopilot, my mind replaying every memory of Lorraine that I had buried deep. Our wedding day, the first time she had told me she loved me, the moment she told me she was leaving, the way she had looked at me when she showed up at my door months later, full of regret, but still expecting something I wasn't sure I could give. And now she was in there, somewhere beyond those sliding doors, lying in a hospital bed. I didn't know what I expected to feel, but it wasn't this. Not the rapid heartbeat, not the sweat on my palms, not the overwhelming sense of déjà vu, like I was about to walk into something I couldn't come back from. But I went inside anyway. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and something faintly metallic, the kind of scent that settles into your lungs and lingers. The waiting room was half full, people hunched over phones, some pacing, some staring blankly at the walls as if their thoughts were louder than the world around them. I walked to the front desk, cleared my throat. Lorraine Mitchell. Someone called me about her. The nurse barely looked up from her screen. Room 214. Down the hall, third door on the left. I nodded, mumbling a quiet, thanks, before making my way down the hall. My footsteps echoed in the sterile corridor, each step heavier than the last. And then I was standing in front of her door. I hesitated. What was I doing here? What did she expect me to say? More importantly, what did I expect? I had no answers. Only the gnawing sense that I was about to face something I wasn't ready for. I pushed the door open. Lorraine was lying in bed, pale and smaller than I remembered. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her hair was messy, her hands resting limply on the thin hospital blanket. There were 4 drips in her arm, a heart monitor beeping steadily beside her. She turned her head at the sound of the door, and when she saw me, her eyes filled with something raw, something unguarded. Walter. Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. You look like hell. A weak, breathy chuckle. I feel worse. I didn't sit down, didn't move closer. I just stood there, staring at the woman who had once been my world, who had shattered it, and who was now lying in a hospital bed, asking for me like none of that had happened. What do you want from me, Lorraine? My voice was quiet but firm. Why am I here? She swallowed, looking away for a moment, as if gathering her thoughts. Then, softly, because you're the only person who ever really knew me. I let out a slow breath, running a hand through my hair. And yet, you still left. She flinched, her fingers curling into the blanket. I was wrong. That's becoming a pattern with you. Silence. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, I don't know how to fix it. I exhaled sharply. You can't. Her lips parted slightly, her throat bobbing as she swallowed. I know. The weight of her admission settled between us, heavy and suffocating. For so long, I had imagined what I would say if I ever had the chance to confront her, to make her feel even a fraction of what I had felt when she walked away. But now that I was here, standing in front of her as she lay there looking smaller than I had ever seen her, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. I sat down in the chair beside her bed, rubbing my palms together. You're not dying, are you? She let out a weak laugh. No, just ran myself into the ground. She shifted slightly, wincing. Turns out, running away from everything catches up to you. I didn't say anything. Because, for the first time, I could see it, really see it. Lorraine wasn't the same woman who had left me. She wasn't the same person who had thought the grass was greener on the other side. She looked like someone who had been chasing happiness so desperately that she had lost herself along the way. And I realized, in that moment, that I didn't hate her. I wasn't sure if that made things better or worse. But I knew one thing. No matter how much she regretted what she had done, no matter how much she wished she could go back, there were some things you just couldn't undo. And maybe, just maybe, that was the lesson we both needed to learn. Hospitals have a strange way of making time feel slower, like the entire world outside doesn't exist. Sitting there beside Lorraine, I felt trapped between 2 versions of my life, the one I had before she left and the one I was trying to build without her. The beeping of the heart monitor, the sterile scent of antiseptic, the way she looked at me with something between regret and exhaustion, it was all too much, yet not enough to make me walk away. I didn't owe her anything. That's what I kept telling myself. But I still hadn't left. She shifted slightly in the bed, wincing as she adjusted her position. "Walter," she said softly, "I know this doesn't change anything. I know I can undo what I did." I let out a breath, leaning back in the chair, arms crossed. "So why am I here?" She hesitated, then reached for the cup of water on the tray beside her bed, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted it to her lips. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. "Because I needed you to know the truth." I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "I know the truth, Lorraine. You walked out on me. You picked someone else." My tone was even, but there was no mistaking the bitterness underneath. "What's left to say?" Her grip tightened around the cup. "I didn't pick him." I scoffed, leaning forward slightly. "Then what the hell do you call it?" She swallowed hard, staring down at her lap. I was trying to run away. I blinked. From what? From myself? From what I thought I was supposed to be? She hesitated, then finally met my gaze. "From you." A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. "Wow, that makes me feel so much better." Her face twisted slightly. "That's not what I meant." "Then explain it to me, Lorraine," I said, voice harder now. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sure as hell looks like you threw away our marriage because you wanted something else." She looked away, inhaling deeply as if gathering her thoughts. "I didn't know who I was anymore, Walter. I spent so many years being us, being your wife, being the person everyone thought I should be, that I felt like I was drowning." Her voice was raw, filled with something close to desperation. "And then he came along, and for the first time, I thought, maybe I could be someone else. Maybe I could breathe again." I stared at her, trying to process the words. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I was wrong. He wasn't the answer. Leaving wasn't the answer. And by the time I realized that, it was too late." I shook my head, rubbing a hand over my face. "So what? You expect me to feel sorry for you? To tell you it's okay?" "No," she swallowed, her eyes glistening. "I don't expect anything." Silence stretched between us. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if there was anything left to say. I had spent months, piecing myself back together after what she did. And now here she was, telling me she had left not because she didn't love me, but because she had been too lost to see what she already had. It didn't make the pain go away. It didn't fix anything. But for the first time, I could see it, the real Lorraine. Not the woman who had walked out of our home with her bags packed. Not the woman who had acted like I was just another chapter in her life she had finished reading. This was a woman who had lost herself. And in doing so, she had lost me too. I stood up. Her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't say anything. I shoved my hands into my pockets, staring down at her. "I spent so long wondering why I wasn't enough for you," I said, voice quieter now. "But I think I finally get it. It was never about me, was it?" A tear slipped down her cheek. She shook her head. "No." I nodded slowly. "That's what makes this easier." She blinked. "What does?" I exhaled, finally feeling the weight I had been carrying for months begin to lift. Walking away. And this time, I did. I didn't look back. I walked out of that hospital without a second glance. No hesitation, no lingering doubt. Just the steady sound of my footsteps echoing in the sterile hallway, each step carrying me further away from the woman who had once been my entire world. For months, I had imagined this moment, what it would feel like to finally let her go. I thought it would be dramatic, maybe even painful. But as I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Not happiness. Not relief. Just a quiet understanding that some things, no matter how much you want to fix them, are meant to stay broken. I stood by my car for a while, watching as the sky darkened above the hospital parking lot. Somewhere inside that building, Lorraine was lying in a hospital bed, dealing with the consequences of her choices. And for the first time, I realized that her pain wasn't my burden to carry anymore. She had been my wife, my best friend, the person I had built a life with. But she had also been the one who tore it all apart. And now, she had to live with that. I had spent too long trying to understand why she had done what she did, why she had chosen to leave, why she had only come back when she had nothing left. But none of that mattered anymore. Because love, real love, doesn't destroy. It doesn't walk away. I climbed into my car, gripping the steering wheel, exhaling slowly. The weight on my chest, the one I had been carrying since the night she left, felt lighter. Maybe it would never fully disappear, but at least now, it wasn't holding me down. As I pulled out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. A message from a friend I hadn't seen in months, asking if I wanted to grab a drink. I smiled. Maybe it was time to start saying yes again. Maybe it was time to start living. And as I drove away from the hospital, from Lorraine, from everything that had once defined me, I finally understood she had left me once. And this time, I was the one leaving her behind.